The International Space Station trembled as the Zagorian scout ship materialized seemingly from nowhere, its iridescent hull reflecting the distant sun. Inside the station, astronaut Sarah Chen was the first to spot the alien vessel through the observatory module window. "Houston, we have a situation," she reported, her voice remarkably steady. "There's an unidentified craft approximately 200 meters off our starboard side. It's not one of ours." Within minutes, military satellites redirected their focus, confirming what humanity had long speculated, but never proven. We were not alone. Commander K-Vex watched the primitive space habitat with 4 pupilled eyes, mandibles clicking in amusement as his ship's sensors analyzed the station's rudimentary life support systems and structural integrity. "Such fragile constructions," he remarked to his science officer, Mevlin. "Their entire station could be disabled with a single energy pulse." Mevlin adjusted her sensory apparatus, frowning at the readings on her console. "Commander, there's something unusual about their biological profiles. Their neural patterns show remarkable adaptability, and their stress responses are different from other species we've encountered." K-Vex waved a clawed hand dismissively. "All species show unusual characteristics when first studied. Remember the Trilaxians with their silicon-based circulatory systems. They still fell within 6 planetary rotations. On Earth, emergency sessions convened at the United Nations, Pentagon, Kremlin, and Beijing's Central Military Commission. Civilians glued themselves to news feeds as grainy images of the alien vessel circulated globally. Stock markets plummeted. Religious leaders called for calm while privately questioning their doctrines. Back at the space station, the communication system crackled to life with a voice speaking perfect English. "Inhabitants of planet designation 3 to 571. This is Commander K-Vex of the glorious Zygorian Empire. 17 systems, strong and expanding. Your world has been selected for integration into our dominion. Resistance is unnecessary and would result in regrettable consequences for your population centers." The message repeated in Mandarin, Russian, Arabic, Spanish, and Hindi, evidence that the Zagorians have been monitoring Earth's communications for some time. President Ilana Martinez addressed the world from the Oval Office, her expression grave but determined. "Fellow citizens of Earth, today we face the most momentous event in human history. I have authorized a response to our visitors, expressing our desire for peaceful dialogue." K-Vex received Earth's diplomatic message with mild surprise. Most species responded with either immediate capitulation or feudal military posturing. This measured response suggested a level of political sophistication he hadn't anticipated from such a technologically immature race. "Your diplomatic overture is acknowledged," K-Vex transmitted. "However, the Zygorian Empire does not negotiate terms of integration. We offer you the ancient privilege of the Challenge Protocol, a series of competitions to demonstrate your species' worthiness. Victory in even one challenge will earn you autonomous status within our empire." What K-Vex didn't reveal was that no species had ever succeeded. The challenges were designed to demonstrate Zygorian superiority, while giving subjugated populations the illusion they had a fair chance to determine their fate. As scientists and military advisors debated humanity's options, Mevlin approached K-Vex privately. "Commander, my detailed analysis shows these humans possess remarkable endocrine responses and psychological resilience indicators. Perhaps we should conduct further studies before proceeding with standard protocols." K-Vex's facial ridges darkened, the Zygorian equivalent of a confident smile. "Your concerns are noted, science officer, but unnecessary. Begin preparations for the Challenge Protocol. It's time these humans understand their place in the galactic hierarchy." Little did he know, humanity had spent its entire evolutionary history overcoming impossible odds, adapting to challenges, and defying expectations. The Zygorian Empire was about to learn a costly lesson. The United Nations Special Assembly buzzed with tension as representatives from every nation crammed into the historic hall. On the central screen, Profiles of potential candidates scrolled past, each person representing humanity's best hope against the Zygorian challenge. We need individuals who embody our species' greatest strengths, Secretary General Okonjo declared, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Not just physical prowess, but the full spectrum of human capability. In the third row, General Takashi Yamamoto raised his hand. With respect, Madam Secretary, conventional military assets should remain our priority. These tournaments may be a distraction while the aliens position their fleet. The Zygorians have been explicit, responded Dr. Fatima Nusser, the Assembly's scientific advisor. The challenges are their cultural tradition, a way to assess new species. Our satellites confirm their fleet remains in standard orbit formation. After hours of deliberation, 5 names emerged from thousands of candidates. Major Alina Rice was located at a remote training facility in the Rockies. When the call came, she was hanging upside down from a cliff face, instructing cadets on extreme environment survival tactics. "Man!" shouted a young lieutenant from above, priority communication from Washington. Alina sighed, secured her line, and scaled the cliff with efficient precision. "Tell me they've reconsidered the nuclear option," she said, only half joking. Across the world in Bangalore, Dr. Amit Patel stared at his quantum processor, the third prototype this month, when his assistant burst into the lab babbling about aliens and global competitions. He initially assumed it was an elaborate prank by his university colleagues. "This isn't theoretical anymore," his assistant insisted, showing him the official summons on a government tablet. "They need your mind, not just your research." Amit's fingers trembled slightly as he powered down his equipment. Practical application was always the goal, he whispered to himself. "I just didn't expect the stakes to be quite this high." In Addis Ababa, Hale Desta was helping young runners perfect their form when government officials arrived in black SUVs. His students watched wide-eyed as their coach was whisked away with barely time to grab his lucky running shoes. "You want me to race against aliens?" he asked during the flight to New York. "How can we know their physical capabilities?" "We don't," admitted the diplomat accompanying him. "That's why we need someone who understands that winning isn't always about being the strongest or fastest. Sometimes it's about knowing when to conserve energy and when to push beyond perceived limits." Wei Ling was easier to convince. The chess grandmaster simply nodded when approached at a tournament in London, forfeited her match, and walked directly to the waiting helicopter. "Pattern recognition transcends species," she stated matter-of-factly. "Their biology may differ, but logic has universal constants." Finding Jack Torres proved most challenging. The high school science teacher had taken his students on a field trip to study geological formations in a remote canyon. When finally located, his response surprised the officials. "I've been expecting you," he said, shouldering his weathered backpack. "Figured someone would connect the dots eventually." The recruitment team exchanged confused glances until Jack elaborated. 20 years in Special Operations Engineering Corps before I burned out and found my calling in education. My service record was classified, but I assumed it would surface given the circumstances. When the 5 finally converged at the United Nations complex, their first meeting was anything but harmonious. "A teacher?" Elena questioned, eyeing Jack skeptically. "With all due respect to educators, we're facing an advanced alien species in life-or-death competitions." Jack smiled thinly. "And with all due respect, Major, you might want to check my file before making assumptions." Before tensions could escalate further, Secretary General Okonjo entered with a sobering announcement. "The Zygorians have transmitted the details of the first challenge. It begins tomorrow at dawn. Humanity's future now rests in your hands." Dawn broke over the Sahara with merciless intensity. The specially constructed arena sprawled across 50 square miles of the most unforgiving desert terrain Earth had to offer. A choice made by the Zygorians after their environmental scans identified it as one of the planet's most hostile natural regions. Hale Desta stood at the starting line, surrounded by a small support team. Dr. Patil adjusted the minimalist hydration system they designed overnight, while Major Reyes reviewed the course map one final time. "Remember," she said, tracing the route with her finger, "they've placed observation drones every 10 miles. When you reach each checkpoint, take the water but don't linger." Jack Torres handed Hale a small pouch. Desert survival basics, emergency electrolytes, and a signal mirror, hopefully unnecessary. But hope is not a strategy. Hale finished with a smile. "I've run through Ethiopian highlands in summer. This will be an adjustment, but not impossible." The Zygorian competitors arrived in a flash of light, 5 warriors teleporting directly to the starting area. Their exoskeletons gleamed under the rising sun, complex technology visibly integrated into their muscular forms. The tallest, sporting iridescent markings of rank, approached Hale with an evaluating gaze. "I am Sub-Commander Traz," he announced, voice translator creating perfect English. "Lead competitor for the endurance trial. Your physiology seems ill-suited for this environment." Hale extended his hand, which Traz stared at in confusion. "Human custom," Hale explained. "A gesture of respect between competitors." Traz cautiously touched his clawed appendage to Hale's palm. "Curious ritual. The Empire appreciates spirited competition, even from species destined for subordinate status." From a hovering platform, Commander Kivex addressed the small gathering of officials and media representatives. His voice boomed across the desert through amplification technology. "The terms are simple. 100 miles across the designated course. First competitor to cross the finish line earns victory for their species. Interference with other competitors is forbidden. Medical withdrawal constitutes forfeit." At precisely 700 hours, a pulse of energy shot skyward, signaling the start. The Zygorian competitors launched forward with astonishing speed, quickly disappearing over the first dune formation. Hale began at a measured pace that seemed painfully slow in comparison. "He's letting them get too far ahead," worried one of the human officials. Jack Torres shook his head. "He's doing exactly what he should, playing the long game." By midday, global audiences watched the live feeds with growing concern. The Zygorians maintained a punishing pace, their augmented bodies seemingly impervious to the 118-degree heat. Hale trailed by nearly 8 miles, his steady rhythm unchanged despite sweat pouring down his dust-caked face. Then, at the 30-mile mark, something unexpected happened. The lead Zygorian, Traz, visibly faltered. His stride, previously mechanical in its precision, became irregular. The second Zygorian competitor soon exhibited similar signs of distress. In the command ship orbiting above, Science Officer Mevlin studied the biometric data with growing alarm. "Commander, our competitors are experiencing systemic overheating. Their thermal regulation implants are failing to compensate for the sustained exposure." Kivex frowned. "Impossible. The enhancements were specifically calibrated for extreme conditions." "For short-duration extremes," Mevlin clarified. "Our warriors train for intense combat scenarios lasting hours, not prolonged stress over an entire day." By late afternoon, the race dynamics had dramatically shifted. 3 Zygorian competitors had withdrawn, their bodies simply shutting down despite their technological advantages. Traz and 1 other continued, but their pace had degraded significantly. Hale, meanwhile, maintained his methodical rhythm, the same pace he'd started with hours earlier. As the brutal sun finally began its descent, he passed the first struggling Zygorian, offering a respectful nod as he continued forward into the gathering dusk. "What you're witnessing," Dr. Paddle explained to the astonished UN observers, "is the result of 2 million years of evolution. Before we had weapons or technology, humans hunted by simply outlasting our prey. We are persistence predators." The Zygorian command ship's strategic chamber hummed with energy as Wei Ling stepped through the teleportation field. Her small form seemed particularly vulnerable surrounded by the towering aliens, yet her expression remained calm, almost analytical as she surveyed the room. Strategic Master Krell studied the human with compound eyes that shifted color with his thoughts, currently a dismissive amber. 6 neural processors visibly embedded in his elongated skull pulsed with blue light, constantly calculating, assessing, predicting. Your species' survival now depends on a game, Krell stated, mandibles clicking in what the translation matrix identified as amusement. How peculiarly fitting. Games often reveal fundamental truths about those who play them, Wei replied, her voice steady despite the oppressive gravity settings the Zygorians maintained on their vessels. A holographic interface materialized between them, a board of shifting geometric patterns spanning multiple translucent layers. Game pieces resembling abstract sculptures glowed with various intensities. Tesseract strategy. Commander Kvex explained from his observation platform, the pinnacle of Zygorian tactical thought. The rules are complex, but essentially a 4-dimensional variant of chess with evolutionary game pieces and probabilistic outcome matrices. Wei interrupted, already studying the board configurations. The underlying structure suggests similarities to ancient Earth games like Go, chess, and Shoju combined. Hvex's head ridge flared in surprise. You've encountered this before? No, Wei said, taking her seat. But pattern recognition transcends specific rule systems. May I request tea before we begin? The bizarre request so confused the Zygorians that they complied without objection. A service drone delivered a steaming cup of green tea, which Wei accepted with a small bow. On Earth, billions watched through the video feed the Zygorians had graciously provided, a gesture of confidence in their inevitable victory. In the Crisis Command Center, Jack Torres frowned at the screen. They're displaying the game, but not explaining the rules. How are we supposed to know if she's winning? Dr. Patil adjusted his glasses. We don't need to understand the specific rules. Watch Wei's opponent. His color patterns shift with emotional states. That's our indicator. The game began with Krell making rapid, precise movements, his neural processors flaring brightly with each calculation. Wei's moves seemed random by comparison, sometimes taking several minutes of contemplation before placing a piece. After 20 minutes, Krell's carapace displayed the Zygorian equivalent of a confident smile. Your position is compromised in at least 17 critical vectors. Perhaps your species would prefer a simpler challenge. Wei sipped her tea. Interesting assessment. May I ask how long you've been strategic master? The question caught Krell off guard. 342 planetary cycles. I have defeated challengers from 26 species. Impressive. Wei nodded. I've played chess since I was 3 years old. 29 years of human development versus 3 centuries of Zygorian experience. She placed a piece that seemed to sacrifice a significant position. Krell's eyes flashed green, the Zygorian indication of confusion. In the command center, Belina leaned forward. Did she just deliberately make a bad move? On the ship, Wei closed her eyes for precisely 30 seconds before making her next 3 moves in rapid succession. The holographic board rippled with energy as patterns began shifting in unexpected configurations. Krell's confident demeanor faltered. His next moves took increasingly longer, his neural processors pulsing erratically. Where previously he had calculated billions of permutations forward, he now found himself responding to immediate threats that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Impossible, he muttered, mandibles clicking rapidly. Your strategy defies optimal play patterns. Wei smiled slightly. That's because I'm not playing to win immediately. I'm playing to create beauty. Over the next hour, the game transformed. What began as Krell's dominant position deteriorated into a complex web of interconnected vulnerabilities. Where the Zygorian saw individual moves, Wei had constructed an elegant trap that only became visible when it was too late to escape. You sacrificed optimal positions to create a larger pattern I could not perceive, Krell finally acknowledged, his processors dimming in surrender. Wei nodded. Humans call it seeing the forest for the trees. Sometimes the best strategy isn't the most obvious one. Hvex watched in silence, a troubling realization forming. These humans possessed something his species had engineered out of themselves generations ago in pursuit of computational perfection, intuitive creativity. The artificial environment constructed for the survival challenge resembled no place on Earth, or perhaps too many places at once. Jagged ice formations gave way to steaming geothermal vents. Toxic pools glowed an unnatural purple beside sparse vegetation with metallic leaves. The atmosphere itself shimmered with particulates that required filtration masks for the human team. Jack Torres led Elena, Amit, and 2 UN-appointed survival specialists across the alien terrain. They'd been teleported here with minimal equipment, a basic toolkit, filtration devices, and clothing engineered to withstand temperature extremes. Reminds me of that training exercise in Kamchatka, Elena muttered, scanning the horizon. Except the volcanic gases, there didn't change color. The Zygorian team materialized 100 meters away, immediately deploying a series of mechanical drones and portable shield generators. Sub-Commander Vrex, who oversaw this challenge, barked orders as his team efficiently established a defensive perimeter. Commander Kvex's voice echoed across the landscape from unseen speakers. This environment replicates conditions on the outer moon of Zygorius Prime. Temperature fluctuations, atmospheric toxicity, and resource scarcity will test your species' adaptability. The challenge duration is 72 hours. Success criteria: survival with minimal physiological degradation. Jack dropped to one knee, examining the crystalline soil structure. Dr. Patel, what do you make of these mineral formations? Amit adjusted his glasses, frowning. The refraction pattern suggests a silicon-based lattice, possibly with water molecules trapped within the structure. That's what I thought. Jack nodded. Everyone follow me, but step exactly where I step. The team moved deliberately across the harsh terrain, Jack occasionally stopping to examine rock formations or test soil density with a small tool from his kit. To observers, their wandering appeared aimless compared to the Zygorians' immediate deployment of advanced technology. They're laughing at us, Elena noted, glancing toward the alien camp where shield generators hummed with energy. Let them, Jack replied calmly. Pride comes before a fall. That's a universal constant. After an hour of methodical exploration, Jack led them to a sheltered outcropping where several rock formations converged. Here, he said, pointing to a subtle discoloration in the ground. We dig here. Based on what evidence? One of the UN specialists questioned skeptically. Mineral deposition patterns, Jack explained. On Earth, this arrangement almost always indicates groundwater. I'm betting the same geological principles apply here. Using their limited tools, the team excavated carefully. 6 feet down, their efforts were rewarded with the distinct sound of moisture. Jack fashioned a primitive filtration system using materials from their kit, producing the first clean water. How did you know? Amit asked, genuinely impressed. Jack smiled faintly. 20 years in the field teaches you to read landscapes. Before we had technological solutions, humans survived by understanding natural systems. In the Zygorian camp, things progressed with military efficiency. Their energy shields repelled the worst environmental effects, while drones gathered resources and established monitoring systems. Sub-Commander Vrex observed the humans' primitive efforts with derision. They waste energy on manual labor when they should be establishing defensive positions, he commented to his second-in-command. This challenge will be concluded quickly. Above in the observation vessel, Science Officer Mevlin monitored both teams' biometric data. Commander, the human called Torres shows unusual neurological patterns. His stress indicators remain remarkably stable despite the hostility of the environment. Kvex leaned closer to the display. Explain. Most sentient beings show predictable stress responses to survival threats. His readings suggest he's almost comfortable in crisis situations. As the artificial day cycled into night, bringing plummeting temperatures and increased atmospheric toxicity, the difference in approaches became more pronounced. The Zygorians relied entirely on their technology, shields, atmospheric processors, thermal regulators. The human team adapted. Jack instructed them to build a shelter using principles that maximized heat retention with minimal materials. Amit repurposed their filtration masks to capture atmospheric moisture during the temperature drop. Elena established a security perimeter using natural features of the landscape rather than energy fields. "We're not fighting the environment," Jack explained as they huddled in their remarkably effective shelter. "We're working with it. That's the human way." The combat arena stretched before Elena Reyes like a mechanical nightmare. Multiple levels connected by precarious bridges, shifting terrain panels, and environmental hazards designed to test both strength and tactical awareness. Holographic displays surrounding the structure broadcast her vital signs alongside those of her opponent. Battlemaster Grax stood nearly 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton augmented with combat enhancements that pulsed with energy. 4 arms ended in precision-engineered claws capable of shearing through metal. The Zygorian warrior performed a series of warm-up movements with fluid grace that belied his massive size. "You can still withdraw," Dr. Pidal said quietly as he helped Elena with final preparations. "There's no dishonor in recognizing a physiological mismatch of this magnitude." Elena tightened the lightweight body armor Jack had modified for maximum mobility. Withdrawal isn't an option. The Zygorians would interpret it as humanity conceding our inferiority. Besides, Jack added, Elena has advantages Grax doesn't know about, such as being completely outmatched in strength, speed, and reach. Wei asked with uncharacteristic sarcasm. "Such as being underestimated," Elena replied calmly. "That's always been my edge." Commander Kvex presided over the opening ceremony, his voice resonating through the arena. "Combat challenge parameters are simple. Incapacitate your opponent through any means necessary. Lethal force is permitted but not required for victory." His compound eyes shifted toward Elena. "Major Reyes, as the clear biological disadvantaged combatant, you may select your starting position." Elena surveyed the complex arena. "The aquatic sector," she decided, pointing to a section containing various water features. The Zygorian officials exchanged confused glances. The water zones were considered disadvantageous, offering limited movement options. As both combatants took their positions, the assembled Zygorian spectators chittered with anticipation. Their species revered martial prowess above all attributes, and Grax represented the pinnacle of their warrior tradition. "Begin," Kvex commanded, and a resonant tone signaled the start of combat. Grax immediately charged forward with frightening speed, leaping across intervening obstacles with single bounds. Elena didn't attempt to match his aggression, instead diving sideways into a narrow water channel. The Zygorian skidded to a halt at the water's edge, mandibles clicking in annoyance. "Your aquatic mobility is surprising," Grax noted as Elena surfaced several meters away. "But you cannot remain submerged indefinitely." "True," Elena agreed, then disappeared underwater again. The Zygorian paced along the edge, calculating the most efficient interception point. His species had evolved on arid plains, while capable of swimming. They avoided water whenever possible. From the observer's platform, Science Officer Mev Lin provided commentary. "The human is exploiting our natural aversion to deep water." Interesting tactical choice. When Elena finally emerged on a platform across the water section, Grax was waiting, having circled around. His arms spread wide, blocking all escape routes. "Nowhere to retreat now, human," he rumbled. "Face your defeat with dignity." Elena smiled. Who said anything about retreating? What followed astonished the watching Zygorians. Rather than avoiding Grax's attacks, Elena moved toward them, slipping inside his considerable reach. Where he expected her to defend, she attacked, targeting joints and sensory organs with precision strikes. "What is she doing?" Kvex demanded, leaning forward in his command chair. "A human combat technique called close quarters battle," Mevlin explained, reviewing her database. "They developed it to overcome superior opponents by exploiting biomechanical vulnerabilities." Grax grew increasingly frustrated as his powerful blows met empty air, while Elena delivered debilitating strikes to pressure points even he didn't know existed in his anatomy. His neural enhancements struggled to predict her seemingly chaotic movement patterns. "You fight without logic or pattern," he growled, backing away to reassess. "That's where you're wrong," Elena replied, circling cautiously. "I'm using patterns you've never encountered." As the battle approached its second hour, both combatants showed signs of fatigue. Grax's technological advantages provided superior strength, but demanded enormous energy. Elena's endurance training allowed her to maintain consistent performance despite accumulating minor injuries. "Remarkable," Jack commented to his teammates as they watched. "She's using the same principle Hale demonstrated. Humans can sustain effort longer than Zagorians." The turning point came when Grax launched an all-out assault, committing fully to a devastating attack sequence. Elena, instead of evading as expected, stepped into the charge, a counterintuitive move that positioned her perfectly to use the Zagorian's momentum against him. The massive warrior crashed to the ground, pinned by a scientifically perfect application of leverage. "Yield," Elena demanded, maintaining the hold that compressed critical nerve clusters. For several tense moments, the arena fell silent. Then, to the shock of his fellow Zygorians, Battlemaster Grax tapped his claw against the ground. The universal signal of submission. While the challenges continued captivating global attention, Dr. Amit Patel worked tirelessly in a hastily assembled laboratory beneath the United Nations complex. Surrounded by holographic displays and the world's most advanced computing systems, he analyzed data streams intercepted from Zygorian transmissions. "There's something fundamentally different about their approach to quantum mechanics," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes as he addressed the international team of scientists collaborating remotely. "Their technology is advanced, certainly, but their understanding of entanglement is incomplete." Professor Chen from Beijing University leaned closer to her camera. "Incomplete how?" "Their ships manipulate gravitational fields in ways we've only theorized. Look at these energy signatures." Amit highlighted a complex waveform pattern. "Their quantum field generators use a linear progression model. They're treating quantum states as binary either slash or propositions, rather than probability waves. That's because they evolved sequential thinking patterns," Dr. Rodriguez from CERN noted. "Remember Mevlin's biological scans. Zygorian neural pathways process information linearly, one quantum state at a time." Amit's eyes widened. While human brains naturally consider multiple quantum states simultaneously, even contradictory ones. "That's it." His fingers flew across interfaces, modeling a defensive system that exploited this fundamental difference in quantum perception. Working through successive nights with minimal sleep, Amit developed what he called a quantum probability shield, a theoretical defense that would cause Zygorian targeting systems to miscalculate strike probabilities by orders of magnitude. Meanwhile, aboard the Zygorian command ship, Kvex faced growing pressure from Imperial High Command. His latest report detailing Elena's victory over Battlemaster Grax had created unprecedented controversy. "Your handling of these challenges has become an embarrassment to the Empire." Grand Admiral Zex's hologram towered in the command center. 3 consecutive defeats by a pre-interstellar species suggests either incompetence or sabotage. Kvex maintained rigid composure despite the insult. "The humans demonstrate unexpected capabilities that warrant further study before assimilation. Their adaptability alone could provide valuable genetic material for—" "Enough," Zex interrupted. "Battle Admiral Vrax will arrive within your planetary cycle to assume command. Prepare your forces for standard subjugation protocols." After the transmission ended, Mevlin approached cautiously. "Commander, standard subjugation protocols would result in the extinction of several human population centers." Kvex's facial ridges darkened with concern. "I'm aware, Science Officer." "Permission to speak freely." "Granted. These humans are different from other species we've encountered. Their response to challenges demonstrates cognitive flexibility alongside remarkable physical adaptability. Destroying them would eliminate unique evolutionary traits that could benefit our understanding of sentient development. HFY remained silent for several moments before making an unprecedented decision: establish a secure channel to the human command center. Back on Earth, the crisis team was startled when HFY's image appeared on their primary screen. His message was brief but shocking. Battle Admiral Vrax approaches with a subjugation fleet. The challenges are being overridden. Prepare your defenses. The transmission ended before questions could be asked. General Yamamoto immediately ordered global military forces to high alert, but everyone recognized the futility of conventional weapons against Zygorian technology. How long do we have? Secretary General Okonjo asked grimly. Approximately 18 hours, Jack calculated. Not enough time for evacuation or meaningful military preparation. Elena looked toward Amit. Please tell me you have something. Amit nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Theoretically, yes. The quantum probability shield could disrupt their weapon systems, but it's untested and requires resources we barely have. What do you need? The Secretary General asked. Every quantum computer on the planet networked together, and access to the global power grid. He paused, the magnitude of his request evident, and about 20 hours of uninterrupted work. You have 18, Elena reminded him soberly. As Amit's team raced against time, HFY made his own preparations. His career, possibly his life, was forfeit the moment he warned Earth. Mevlin and a small cadre of loyal officers worked silently alongside him, recognizing the historical significance of their actions. Commander, Mevlin reported, Vrax's flagship has entered the system. Their weapons systems are powering up. The United Nations General Assembly Hall had never witnessed such a gathering. Representatives from every nation stood shoulder to shoulder with military leaders, scientists, and the 5 champions who had defied alien expectations. All eyes focused on the central holographic display showing Vrax's battle fleet entering Earth's orbit, 17 warships with enough firepower to reduce continents to ash. Defense grid activation in 3 minutes, Emmett announced, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. For the past 18 hours, he had coordinated a global effort unlike anything in human history. Quantum computers from research institutions worldwide linked together in a makeshift network. Power plants across 6 continents redirected output to massive emitters hastily constructed using modified satellite dishes and repurposed military radar arrays. Will it work? Secretary General Okonjo asked quietly. Amit's bloodshot eyes reflected the flickering displays. In theory, yes. In practice, he shrugged. We've never had the opportunity to test quantum probability manipulation at this scale. That's the most human answer possible, Jack Torres remarked with a tired smile. We're about to either make history or become it. In orbit, Battle Admiral Vrax's flagship positioned itself for the first strike. His carapace gleamed with ceremonial markings denoting previous conquests as he addressed his battle group. The subjugation of Planet Designation 3571 will proceed according to standard protocols. Primary population centers will be targeted first to minimize resistance. Commander HFY and his crew are confined to quarters pending investigation for potential treason. Weapons systems, prepare targeting solutions. On the command ship's detention level, HFY and Mevlin remained under guard. Their warning to Earth had been discovered almost immediately. Though Vrax had dismissed it as meaningless, what defense could a pre-interstellar species possibly mount against the Empire's might? Do you regret your decision, Commander? Mevlin asked softly. HFY considered the question. The Empire has conquered 17 systems by following the same doctrine without adaptation or reconsideration. These humans have demonstrated more evolutionary innovation in 3 challenges than our species has in a millennium of expansion. That doesn't answer my question. No, HFY said firmly. I do not regret warning them. They deserve the opportunity to face extinction with preparation. however inadequate. Back on Earth, the final seconds ticked away. Emmett's system reached full power, creating an invisible quantum field surrounding the planet. Elena, Hale, and Jack stood with him at the primary control station. 5 humans representing the best of their species, united in humanity's darkest hour. Quantum probability shield activated, Emmett announced as indicators turned green across his displays. Above, Vrax gave the order. Commence planetary bombardment. The flagship's main weapon powered up, drawing energy from its antimatter core. Targeting systems locked onto New York City, the first of many targets. Vrax watched with clinical detachment as the beam discharged, a blinding lance of energy hurtling toward Earth. Then something unprecedented happened. The beam missed, not by a small margin, but by hundreds of miles, striking empty ocean instead of the metropolis. Targeting malfunction, the weapons officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. Recalibrating. The second shot veered wildly in another direction. The third failed to discharge entirely. What is happening? Vrax demanded, his composure cracking. Across the Zygorian fleet, confusion reigned. Weapons systems reported contradictory targeting data. Navigation computers calculated impossible positions. Communication arrays received signals before they were sent. In the detention level, Vex witnessed the chaos through a monitor. Understanding dawning. They're exploiting our sequential quantum processing, he explained to Mevlin. Their defense system isn't blocking our weapons. It's changing the probability matrices our systems use for targeting. Impossible, Mevlin whispered. Such technology would require a fundamental breakthrough in quantum mechanics that should be centuries beyond their development. Vex's mandibles formed the Zygorian equivalent of a smile. Perhaps they are not as primitive as we believed. After an hour of failed attempts and increasingly desperate measures, Vrax faced an unthinkable reality. The subjugation fleet of the mighty Zygorian Empire was effectively neutralized by a species that had only recently discovered nuclear fission. On Earth, exhausted cheers filled the assembly hall as the Zygorian ships withdrew to a higher orbit. The quantum shield had held. Humanity had survived its first extraterrestrial threat, not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of the universe's fundamental properties.